I thought I had it all together, a good job, a nice house, a wife who said all the right things. But let me tell you, I didn't. She stumbled over the little things, and she was unfaithful to me. And the day my wife came home from a business trip and found a stranger answering our door, she realized her whole life had been rewritten behind her back. This ain't no ordinary story about cheating. By the time she figured it all out, she was standing in the ashes of everything she ever loved, while I walked away without a scratch. If you think payback is slow, cold, and brutal, you ain't heard nothing yet. Let's go. I'll never forget the look on her face that day. Heck, I wasn't even there in person, but when she told me later, I could picture it clear as day, like a movie burned into my mind. It was a warm Thursday afternoon. Early fall. You know the kind, where the sun's still got a little heat left in it, but the air's starting to get that bite. Leaves starting to tumble down the driveway. Real pretty if you don't think about all the raking coming your way. My wife had just gotten back from a 5-day business trip to Seattle. She was tired, dragging that little blue suitcase of hers behind her, wheels rattling over the uneven brick walkway I always meant to fix but never got around to. She reached the front door and dug around in that oversized purse she carried everywhere, the one she swore she needed because it fit everything. Took her a minute, juggling the suitcase handle and digging past who knows what, makeup bags, receipts, half a pharmacy, I'd bet. She finally pulled out her house key, the one she'd been using for years. She slipped it into the lock, gave it a good twist, and the thing didn't budge. She frowned, probably thinking maybe she was just tired. Maybe her hand was shaky. Maybe the lock was dry or sticky from the last rainstorm we had. So she tried again. A little harder. Nothing. Not even a click. It didn't feel jammed either. The key just didn't belong anymore. Like she was trying to unlock a stranger's house. She stepped back, confused. Looked up at the numbers above the door. 133, Meadow Lane. Same as always. Porch light still crooked the way I hung it up last winter. Same front porch swing, same cracked flower pot she never got around to replacing. Same house. Only now, the key didn't work. Figuring something had gone screwy, she walked over to the doorbell and pressed it. She probably expected me to come to the door, grinning like a fool, acting like it was some kind of prank. I could just hear her voice in my head. Honey, this isn't funny. Open the door. Except it wasn't me that answered. It wasn't anybody she knew at all. The door swung open and standing there was a woman she'd never laid eyes on before. Mid-30s, brunette hair tied back in a loose ponytail, wearing a faded t-shirt and a pair of jeans like she'd just finished chasing a kid around the house. Which, turns out, she had. A little boy was clinging to her hip, holding a battered yellow toy truck in one hand. The woman looked at my wife like she was the one who didn't belong. Like she was a door-to-door salesman or a Jehovah's Witness or something. You could feel the tension hanging in the air, thick and awkward. My wife, still gripping her suitcase handle like it was an anchor, blinked in disbelief and said, "Who are you? And what are you doing in my house?" The woman gave her a funny look, half sympathy, half suspicion. She adjusted the little boy on her hip and said real gentle-like, Ma'am, I think there's some mistake. We're the new owners." My wife just stared at her, probably thinking she misheard. The woman went on, almost apologetic. "We bought the house about a month ago. Moved in last week. The previous owner said it was a quick sale." "I'm sorry, didn't he tell you?" She said it so casually, like it was just one of those mix-ups with the electric company or the mailman. Like it wasn't a knife twisting in my wife's gut. I guess my wife tried to respond. Maybe she tried to argue, to say there was no way, that there had to be some mistake. But the woman just smiled that tight, uncomfortable smile you give someone when you don't want to escalate things. She disappeared for a second into the house, the little boy still clutching her, and came back with a manila folder. "Here," she said, handing it over. "The previous owner left this for you. Said you might come by." Then, just like that, she closed the door. Not slamming it. Not being rude. Just ending the conversation. My wife stood there, frozen on the porch, the folder hanging from her hand. The house she thought she lived in, our house, was now somebody else's home. Her legs gave out before she even realized what was happening. She crumpled down onto the porch steps, the suitcase tipping over beside her with a hollow clatter. She fainted, right there on the welcome mat that still had our last name stitched across it. At least, it used to be our name. Neighbors must have seen, but folks around there don't like getting involved. It's that polite distance we all keep, you know? Smile and wave when mowing the lawn, but God forbid you ask why someone's passed out on their own front porch. When my wife came to, well, that's another part of the story. But that moment? That 1 second where the lock didn't work, the door swung open, and she saw a stranger holding a baby in her house? That's the second her life snapped in half like a dry twig underfoot. When she finally came to, she sat up slow, feeling like the whole world was tilting sideways. Her head throbbed like somebody had taken a hammer to it, and her mouth tasted like dry dust and old coffee. She brushed the grit off her hands, bits of leaves and porch dirt, and realized she was still clutching that manila folder the stranger had given her. It wasn't sealed, just a flap tucked in like you do when you're in a hurry. She pried it open and pulled out what was inside. It wasn't much. One sheet of plain white paper. On that paper, dead center in bold black ink, was a single word. Fidelity. No greeting. No explanation. No name scribbled at the bottom. Just that word, staring back at her like a slap across the face. Taped to the top corner of the page was a key. Small. Silver. Looked a little beat up, like it had been hanging on somebody's keychain for a while. No fancy tag or engraving. Just a little number stamped into the head. Unit 217. She stared at it, blinking hard, like if she looked long enough the rest of the answers would appear. They didn't. She fumbled in her purse, digging past receipts, lip balm, a couple of airline boarding passes, until she found her phone. Battery at 82%. Plenty of juice. She called my number without even thinking. The phone rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then straight to voicemail. She hung up and called again. This time it didn't even ring. Straight to voicemail again. My voice came on, the same old message. Hey, it's me. Leave a message and I'll get back to you. She tried a 3rd time. Same thing. It felt like she was screaming into an empty canyon. Panic started gnawing at the edge of her mind. She called the number again, gripping the phone so tight her knuckles turned white. Nothing. She left a message this time, her voice shaking so bad she could barely choke out the words. It's me. Please, call me. I don't understand what's going on. Please. She hung up and just sat there on the porch, the autumn breeze picking at her hair, lifting the corner of that paper like it was trying to take it away. The toddler inside the house started crying. She could hear the woman's voice too, soft and patient, trying to calm him down. Her house, the one she'd spent years decorating, saving up for, pouring her soul into, now belonged to another family. She looked down at the key again. The number 217 catching the light. Storage unit. It had to be. She knew the storage place off Highway 9, the one tucked between the old bait shop and a rundown tire store. Place had been there forever, with its rusty gates and faded sign offering first month free. If you paid cash. She knew the key belonged there. Knew it deep in her bones. But for a minute, she just sat. She wasn't ready yet. Wasn't ready to find out what was waiting for her on the other end of that lock. She tried calling me again. This time she didn't even get voicemail. Call failed. Like I'd blocked her. Like the line between us had been cut clean through. No explanation. No warning. She sat there with her head in her hands for a while, trying to hold it together. She didn't cry. Not yet. Tears would come later. For now, she was too stunned, too hollowed out, like somebody had scooped her insides clean and left her shell behind. Another call. Another voicemail. Please. I'm begging you. Just tell me what's happening. She squeezed the phone so hard she thought it might snap in half. But no call came back. No text. Nothing. A car pulled into the driveway behind her, a silver SUV she didn't recognize. A teenage boy hopped out, earbuds jammed in his ears, tossing a basketball from hand to hand. He didn't even glance her way, just jogged up the steps past her like she was invisible, like she didn't exist. The boy rattled the door handle, and the woman inside, the new owner, called out, "It's open," and he slipped inside without a second thought. That was the final nail. She gathered herself up, stood on shaky legs, and grabbed her suitcase. She didn't bother brushing off her pants or fixing her hair. She didn't have it in her. She tucked the manila folder under one arm, stuffed the sheet of paper and key back inside, and stumbled down the steps like she was walking through mud. Every step hurt in ways she didn't have words for. She made it to the curb, dragging the suitcase behind her like an anchor chained to her wrist. She popped open the handle, clicked her phone screen one more time. No missed calls. No messages. The silence buzzed in her ears louder than any alarm ever could. She stood there for a minute longer, her mind blank, then stumbled over to her car parked along the curb. She climbed inside, tossed the manila folder onto the passenger seat, and just sat for a while before finally turning the key in the ignition. All she had was a word she didn't understand, and a key to a door she was terrified to open. And somewhere out there, I was waiting. Or maybe not waiting at all. She didn't waste any time after that. Soon as she left the neighborhood, she punched the address of the old storage place into her phone. It was off Highway 9, tucked behind a half-dead gas station and a bait shop that hadn't sold bait in 10 years. The drive wasn't long, maybe 15 minutes, but to her it must have felt like 100. Every mile she drove, her mind spun faster. The folder. The word fidelity still burned into her brain. The silver key rattling around in her cup holder with every bump in the road. She kept checking her phone at stoplights, hoping I'd call back. Hoping this was some kind of mistake. Some kind of joke gone wrong. But her screen stayed blank the whole way. When she pulled into the gravel parking lot, the place looked even sadder than she remembered. Rows of dented orange doors, paint peeling off like sunburned skin. A broken vending machine buzzed by the office door. A sad little American flag hung limp on the pole out front, half the stars bleached out by the sun. Her hands shook as she dug the key out of her purse and stared at it again. Unit 217. She stepped out of the car. The gravel crunched under her boots. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked once and went quiet. The air smelled like hot metal and rain-soaked concrete. It took her a couple minutes to find the right unit. Down one row, around a corner, and there it was. 217. The padlock was brand new. Shiny and clean, standing out against the rust-streaked door like it didn't belong. She slid the key in and gave it a twist. It opened easy. No struggle, no fight. Like it had been waiting for her. She grabbed the handle, rolled the door up, and the metal groaned loud enough to echo down the rows. Inside, the air was thick and dusty, heavy with the smell of cardboard, old wood, and something else she couldn't place. Like the smell of closing a chapter you didn't know was finished. She stepped inside and looked around. It was all there. Every single piece of her life. Neatly stacked cardboard boxes, plastic tubs with duct tape labels, her favorite reading chair wrapped in a clear plastic sheet. Her clothes, still folded in laundry baskets. A row of her shoes lined up along the far wall, from her scuffed-up hiking boots to the expensive black pumps she only wore for fancy dinners. Her high school yearbooks. That ugly yellow Afghan her grandmother made. Even the damn Christmas decorations she'd argued to keep. She walked deeper in, her boots making soft thumps against the concrete floor. There wasn't an inch of wasted space. It was like someone had gone through the house with a fine-tooth comb, packed up everything that was hers, and dumped it here without a word. Right in the center of the unit was an old metal folding table. And sitting right on top of it, plain as day, was a picture frame. She knew that frame. Cheap brown wood from the discount store, probably $5 tops. She picked it up with trembling hands. The photo inside was worse than any punch to the gut. There she was, my wife, standing outside somewhere, maybe a parking lot or the back of a building, her arms wrapped around a man. Her secretary. The same young guy she always said was like a little brother to her. The same one she'd introduced to me at a company Christmas party a couple years back, smiling like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. In the picture, they weren't just standing close. They were locked together. Her lips pressed hard against his. Her hand curled up on his chest like she owned him. His hand low on her back, pulling her in. It wasn't some friendly goodbye or a careless kiss on the cheek. This was the kind of kiss you give when you think nobody's looking. But somebody had been. Somebody had made sure the moment got captured and framed. She stared at it for a long time. Long enough for her eyes to blur and her hands to start shaking. Everything clicked into place then. The missing pieces. The little excuses. The times she stayed late at the office. The business trips that ran just a little longer than they should have. All of it. She dropped the picture back onto the table like it burned her fingers. It landed face down with a soft thud. Around her, the walls of the storage unit felt like they were closing in. She backed up until she hit one of the boxes, clutching her chest like she needed to hold her heart in place before it fell out. All those years. All those promises. Packed up neat and shoved into a concrete box with a roll-up door. Labeled. Stored. Forgotten. Just like her. She didn't even think about going back to the house. There wasn't a house to go back to anymore. Not really. Not when a stranger had answered the door and handed her life back to her in a manila folder. So she did what anybody would do when the ground gets ripped out from under them. She drove. No real plan. No real destination. Just her and the dull roar of the road under her tires, heading east on I-40, chasing the last bit of daylight. After a while, the interstate signs started to blur together, and the gas gauge nudged close to empty. That's when she spotted one of those old motor lodges, the kind that hasn't had new paint since the 70s. Big flickering neon sign, half the letters burned out. Western Star Motel, it said, though the W and half the S were dead, so it just looked like Western Star Motel. She pulled into the gravel lot, crunching over broken beer bottles and cigarette butts, and parked under a busted floodlight buzzing like it was about to fall out of the sky. The lobby smelled like burnt coffee and bleach. The guy at the front desk barely looked up from his little black and white TV. He slid a room key across the counter, real key, not one of those plastic cards, room 12, ground floor, all the way at the end. She paid cash. Didn't even bother asking for a receipt. She dragged her suitcase behind her, the little wheels rattling over cracked pavement, and let herself into the room. It was exactly what you'd expect. 2 sagging twin beds covered in ugly green bedspreads. A battered nightstand with a sticky-looking lamp. A faded picture of some mountains hanging crooked over the headboard. The carpet was threadbare, the kind that squished underfoot like it had soaked up too many storms. And in the corner, an old ceiling fan spun lazily, making a noise like a dying wasp. She didn't even bother turning on the lights. Just dropped her suitcase by the door and collapsed onto the nearest bed. Still wearing the same clothes she traveled in, yesterday's jeans, a wrinkled blouse that smelled like airports and cheap perfume, she buried her face in the lumpy pillow and cried. Not loud. Not the kind of crying you see in the movies. No wailing, no big dramatic sobs. Just the quiet kind, the kind that leaks out of you when you're too tired to fight anymore. Hot tears soaking into the motel pillow, one after another, until it was too damp to be comfortable, but she didn't have the strength to move. She lay there like that for hours. Or maybe minutes. Time didn't make a lot of sense anymore. She stared up at the ceiling fan, watching it spin around and around and around. Its old motor squealed every third rotation, like a clock ticking down something she couldn't stop. Her mind spun just as hard. How did he know? When did he find out? How long had he been planning this? She thought back over the last few months. The little changes she hadn't noticed at the time but now stuck out like road flares. The way I'd stopped asking when she'd be home. The way the house felt colder, emptier, even when we were both in it. The way I stopped joking with her, stopped holding her hand when we went out for groceries. The way I looked at her sometimes, not angry, not even hurt, just like I didn't see her at all. At the time, she told herself it was work stress. She told herself marriages had rough patches. She told herself it was nothing. But now, lying there in a nameless motel off I-40, with nothing but a suitcase full of the life she used to have, she realized how stupid she'd been. I'd known for a long time. And while she thought she was being so clever, so sneaky, slipping through life with her little lies and little excuses, I was building something else. A plan. A goodbye she couldn't come back from. She wiped her nose on the sleeve of her blouse and rolled onto her back. The mattress springs groaned in protest. The room felt huge and empty, like a tomb. Just her, the hum of the neon outside the window, and that damn ceiling fan slicing through the darkness like a slow, steady blade. She thought about calling again. One more time. Just to hear the ring. Just to hope. She picked up her phone from the nightstand, cracked screen, low battery, and stared at my contact name. No missed calls. No new messages. She didn't call. For the first time, she understood the silence wasn't an accident. It was part of the plan. She curled back onto her side, hugging her knees tight to her chest, trying to make herself small enough to disappear. She didn't close her eyes. She didn't even blink much. She just lay there, staring at the ceiling fan, feeling it carve slow circles through the stale air, wondering if she was still spinning too, or if she was finally, truly, done. Morning came whether she wanted it to or not. She hadn't really rested. Just laid there at the motel all night, wide-eyed, feeling the hours scrape past like sandpaper. When the gray light started leaking through the faded curtains, she knew she couldn't hide any longer. Life didn't stop just because hers had blown apart. So she got up, splashed water on her face, ran her fingers through her hair, and dragged herself into work like she was putting on a costume. The same office. Same stiff gray cubicles. Same smell of burnt coffee and cheap refreshener. It all felt wrong somehow, like she didn't belong there anymore, but nobody else noticed. She forced herself to smile, nod at people she passed in the hallway, and sit down at her desk like nothing was different. Like her world hadn't been knocked clean off its hinges the night before. She stared at her computer screen, pretending to work. Typed a few lines of an email, deleted them. Clicked through reports without really reading. Answered the phone once or twice with a fake bright voice that made her throat ache. Mostly, she just waited. For a text. A call. Something. But the phone sat silent. Just like it had the night before. Just like it would. By midday, Her head was pounding, and her stomach felt like it was tied in a dozen tight knots. She told herself she'd go get some air after lunch, maybe drive somewhere and just breathe for a while. That plan broke the second she heard the wheels. A delivery guy pushed through the glass doors, one of those young guys in a wrinkled company polo shirt, carrying a bouquet of lilies in one hand and a thick white envelope in the other. He stopped at the front desk and asked for her by name. The receptionist, a blonde woman named Darla who loved office gossip more than life itself, called out across the room, Well, someone's got a secret admirer." She grinned like it was Christmas morning. Heads turned. Folks chuckled. It took every bit of strength she had to force a smile and walk up to the desk. She took the flowers, bright white lilies wrapped in that stiff green paper, and the envelope. The delivery guy tipped his cap and was gone before she could ask any questions. Darla leaned over the counter, smirking. "Someone loves you," she teased, her voice loud enough for half the floor to hear. If only she knew. My wife mumbled a thing she didn't mean and hurried back to her desk, cheeks burning. She set the flowers down, staring at them like they might bite. Then she picked up the envelope. It was heavier than she expected. Thick. Serious. No return address. Just her name, written neatly in black ink. No, love, no from. Just her name, like a tombstone. She opened it slowly, her hands trembling so bad she almost tore the corner. Inside were divorce papers. Filed. Signed. Every page crisp and cold, full of words she didn't want to read but couldn't avoid. Legal talk about dissolution, division of assets, termination of marriage. All the ways to end something that once felt unbreakable. Tucked inside, right on top, was a single handwritten note. Plain white paper, my handwriting clear and simple. Just one word. Love. That was it. No explanation. No apology. No accusations. No shouting. Just that one word. Just like the word fidelity the day before. One word to end a chapter. One word to bury a whole life. Her hands shook harder now. She squeezed her eyes shut for a second, but it didn't stop the world from spinning. She sat there, feeling the cold edge of reality settle in. It was done. I wasn't bluffing. I wasn't waiting to talk. I wasn't giving her a second chance. This was the second message, and it was final. Around her, the office buzzed like normal. Phones ringing, keyboards clicking, someone laughing down by the copier. Nobody knew that sitting at her desk, clutching that stupid white envelope, she was watching her whole life slip through her fingers like water she couldn't hold onto. The lilies smelled too sweet. Thick. Heavy. Clinging to the air like cheap perfume. She pushed them aside and stuffed the envelope into her purse, burying it under papers and receipts like she could hide it from herself. But she couldn't. It was branded into her mind now. 2 days ago, she had a house. She had a marriage. She had a future. Now she had a storage unit full of memories, a motel room key in her pocket, and a divorce decree in her hands. All wrapped up neatly. No shouting. No fighting. Just silence. And 2 little words that said everything. Fidelity. Love. And the deafening absence in between. She told her boss she wasn't feeling well, voice cracking, barely holding it together, and grabbed her things. Didn't even shut down her computer. Didn't say goodbye. She bolted out the front door like the place was on fire, clutching her purse and that stupid bouquet of lilies under one arm. Out in the parking lot, the sun was glaring off the windshields, hot and blinding. She fumbled with her keys, got the car door open, and practically threw herself behind the wheel. There was only one place on her mind, the bank. She peeled out of the lot, tires kicking up dust, and gunned it onto the main road. Didn't care about the speed limit. Didn't care about the horns blaring when she cut someone off trying to get onto the highway. Her whole body was running on pure panic now. The kind of panic that drowns out everything else. Her heart hammered against her ribs so hard it hurt. She knew. Somewhere deep down, she already knew. But she had to see for herself. The bank sat on the corner of Maple and 3rd. Small town kind of place, old brick building with a peeling white awning. A few cars sat in the lot, some lady hauling groceries into her back seat. A guy in coveralls cashing a check at the drive-through window. She pulled into a spot crooked, didn't even bother straightening out. Grabbed her purse, slammed the door behind her, and jogged up the front steps. Inside, the cool blast of air conditioning hit her, along with that familiar smell of carpet cleaner and ink. The place was quiet, just a low murmur of folks chatting with tellers behind the counter. She marched straight up to the nearest one. A young woman with dark hair and a neat bun smiled politely. "Good afternoon. How can I help you?" My wife's hand shook as she slid her ID across the counter. I need to check my accounts, she said, her voice tight and too high. Savings. Checking. Everything. Of course, the teller said, tapping away on the computer. 1 moment, please. Seconds stretched into forever. The teller frowned slightly, reading the screen. She clicked around some more, her fingers flying faster now. Ma'am, she said, her voice turning careful, like she was talking to someone holding a live grenade. It looks like there's no funds available in the checking account or the savings. Both balances are 0. It hit her like a slap. 0. 0. 0. That's not possible, she said, her voice cracking. Can you check again? There must be a mistake. The teller bit her lip, clearly uncomfortable. I'm sorry, ma'am. The accounts were emptied yesterday morning. My wife's mind reeled. Yesterday? That meant before she even set foot back in town. Before the stranger opened her front door. Before the storage unit. It had all been timed. Planned. She tried to steady herself, gripping the edge of the counter so hard her knuckles turned white. What about the safe deposit box? She asked, nearly whispering. The teller typed a few more things into the computer. It was closed out yesterday too, she said. Signed authorization. All contents removed. My wife stared at her. She didn't even know what to say. All the things she thought she had, her grandmother's jewelry, her passport, backup cash, everything tucked away safe for a rainy day, gone. Gone without a trace. I need to speak to a manager, she said, the words tumbling out desperate and wrong. The teller nodded and hurried off, leaving her standing there at the counter, fighting the urge to scream or cry or both. She clutched her purse against her chest like a shield. Inside it, a crumpled envelope, divorce papers, a flower delivery receipt, and the key to a storage unit full of everything she had left in the world. The manager came out after a minute, a heavy-set man with a kind face who probably thought he was dealing with just another case of identity theft. He smiled and offered to walk her through the paperwork. Told her everything had been closed legally. Transfers authorized. All correct signatures on file. She barely heard him. Her ears were ringing now. She nodded in all the right places, signed what she needed to sign, and stumbled back out into the parking lot. The sun hit her like a hammer. Hot. Unforgiving. She squinted against it, blinking fast. Out of habit, she pulled out her phone. Still no messages. Still no missed calls. She sat in the driver's seat with the engine running and stared at the empty parking lot in front of her. That's when it really sank in. There was nothing left. No house. No money. No future. Just a key to a dusty storage unit. And a motel bill ticking up by the hour. That's what I left her with. And that's all she had now. She tried to hold it together that first week. Tried to act like everything was fine when it wasn't. Kept showing up at work like nothing had changed, sitting at her desk answering emails and shuffling papers around, hoping no one could see the cracks forming under the surface. But people notice. They always do. Her smiles were thinner. Her voice had a tremble to it she couldn't hide. She moved slower, like everything weighed twice as much as it used to. Most folks kept their distance, offering polite nods and half-hearted good mornings, but you could feel it, the way the room got just a little quieter when she walked by. The way conversations dried up the second she was within earshot. It was only a matter of time. About a week after the delivery, right when she was starting to think maybe she could crawl her way back to normal, her boss called her into his office. Big corner office, leather chairs, fancy wooden blinds. She used to feel proud walking in there. Now her stomach knotted so tight she thought she might throw up. He didn't stand when she came in. Just sat behind his desk, hands folded neatly in front of him, looking more tired than angry. Close the door, he said. She did. The click of it shutting sounded louder than it should have. He gestured to the chair across from him. She sat down, smoothing her skirt out with shaky hands. He didn't say anything right away. Just slid a manila envelope across the desk toward her. Her heart stopped. She already knew what was inside. Slowly, like she was opening a casket, she pulled the flap back and peeked inside. There it was. That picture. The same damn photo from the storage unit. Her and her assistant, caught mid-kiss, arms tangled around each other, clear as daylight. No way to explain it away. No angle to hide from. She looked up at her boss, but he wasn't looking at her. He was staring out the window at the city skyline like he couldn't bear to watch her squirm. This came in the mail, he said, voice flat. No return address. No note. She swallowed hard, but her mouth was dry as sand. She started, but he held up a hand to stop her. I don't need an explanation, he said. And frankly, I don't want one. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his forehead like this whole thing was giving him a headache. "You've been valuable here," he said, "up until now. But this puts the company in a bad spot." Her mouth opened again, but no words came out. He sighed. "Here's what's going to happen," he said. "You're going to resign. Quietly. Today." He slid another envelope across the desk. Resignation papers. Already filled out. All she had to do was sign. "It'll be easier for everyone," he said. "No drama. No firing. You walk away clean." And him?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He looked at her then, finally, and there was no sympathy in his eyes. "Your assistant," he said. "Already gone." She flinched like she'd been slapped. "Fired this morning," he added. "Zero tolerance." He didn't say it, but the message was clear. You made your mess. Now you clean it up. She stared at the resignation papers in front of her, the pen lying neatly beside them. No fight. No negotiation. Just sign and disappear. Her hands trembled as she picked up the pen. In the back of her mind, the pieces started to fit together. This wasn't just bad luck. It wasn't a random chain of disasters. It was deliberate, precise, surgical. I hadn't just taken the house, or the money, or the marriage. I had gutted her life from the inside out, leaving nothing standing. The storage unit, the divorce papers, the drained accounts. Now this, the final nail, stripping her of her career and the little bit of dignity she had left. She signed the papers with a hand that barely worked, passed them back across the desk without meeting his eyes. "Security will walk you out," he said quietly. She stood, legs wobbling, and gathered her purse. The lilies I'd sent were still wilting on her desk when she passed by. She didn't even glance at them. Two uniformed guards, big guys in matching jackets, flanked her as she walked through the office for the last time. No one said goodbye. No one looked her in the eye. It was like she was already a ghost. When she stepped out into the parking lot, the heat hit her full in the face. The sky was a hard, unforgiving blue. The kind of day you'd think was beautiful if you didn't know any better. She stood there for a minute, blinking in the sunlight, trying to figure out where to go. What to do? She had no house, no money, no job, only the car under her feet and whatever was left rattling around in that old motel room. And maybe, if she was honest, not even herself anymore. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't rage. It was a purge. And it was complete. 4 months passed like a slow burn. In that time, she tried everything she could think of to claw her way back. New lawyer. New hair. New attitude. Didn't matter. The damage had been done. There was no fixing it. We sat across from each other in that courtroom, both of us dressed in our Sunday best, both pretending to be civilized while the real battle raged and the paperwork spread out between our lawyers. The judge was an older man, white hair, tired eyes, the kind that had seen it all before. Nothing about our case surprised him. Nothing rattled him. He moved through the process like a man checking off a grocery list. When her lawyer tried to argue for alimony, he didn't even blink. Not with the mountain of evidence I had laid out. Receipts, emails, witness statements, even her signature, neat and perfect, on the house sale paperwork. Signed months earlier when I'd tucked it into some refinancing papers she didn't bother reading. She thought she was signing the usual bank forms. She didn't even read what she was signing. That was the kind of woman she had become. Careless. And now it had cost her everything. The judge ruled fast. No house. No money. No support. Not even a sentimental word from the bench. She got exactly what she had left herself with. Nothing. When it was over, she sat there for a minute longer than she should have, as if maybe the judge would change his mind if she stayed frozen in place. But courtrooms don't work like that. Decisions get made, gavels get banged, and life moves on without waiting for you to catch up. I stood up, tucked the final signed documents into my folder, shook my lawyer's hand, and headed for the exit without looking back. I was halfway across the parking lot, the dry wind tugging at my jacket, when I heard her call out. "Wait," she said. I stopped but didn't turn right away. When I finally faced her, I saw it. The wreck of the woman she used to be. Her eyes were red, her hands twisting in front of her like she didn't know what to do with them. She looked smaller somehow, like the world had squeezed her down to half her size. Her voice cracked when she spoke. "Where did I go wrong?" she asked. It wasn't angry. It wasn't defensive. It was just broken. I looked her dead in the eyes. No pity. No anger left either. Just the plain, simple truth. "You left the hotel restaurant check in your purse," I said. She frowned, confused at first, blinking fast. I kept my voice calm. Patient, even. "Seafood and wine," I said. I don't touch either. Never have. Never will. I let that sink in. It wasn't the kiss. It wasn't the rumors. It wasn't some dramatic confrontation. It was a crumpled receipt stuffed into her purse, forgotten like a piece of trash, that tipped the first domino. She was careless, and I was not. She opened her mouth, maybe to apologize, maybe to argue, but no words came out. Finally, in the smallest voice I ever heard her use, she whispered, "I'm sorry." She meant it. I could see that. But it didn't matter anymore. She hesitated, then asked, "But why? Why so cruel?" I looked at her one last time. The woman who used to be my everything. The woman who thought she could lie and get away with it. The woman who chose a shortcut, thinking it wouldn't cost her anything. And I gave her the last truth she would ever get from me. "Because you deserved it," I said. Simple as that. Then I turned and walked away, the sound of my boots crunching on the gravel the only noise left between us. Behind me, the courthouse doors swung closed with a heavy, final thud. Ahead of me, a clean road. No baggage. No lies. Just freedom. And I didn't look back. Not once. Share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think hurt her more? Losing the house, the money, the job, or his silence? If you liked the story, subscribe to the channel and give us a like.